Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you. Your video seems fine.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah. All right. I think so. We'll just start with the webinar. So good evening, everyone. I hope you're all staying safe and keeping healthy. A warm and humble welcome to the webinar series by Sharp under Youth and Adolescent Health. My name is Meghna Kukreja and I'll be moderating today's webinar. A brief introduction about Sharp. Sharp stands for School Health Annual Report Program. Working for over 22 years in the field of holistic development and healthcare of students and children, we at Sharp always try to educate and open conversations on problems related to youth and adolescents during and after pandemic. Through this webinar series, we hope to spark discussion on some very important topics pertaining to today's youth demography. Since the inception of the pandemic back in 2019, everything has been shifted to online literally for 2 whole years. Finally, when things are coming back on track, thanks to the advent of vaccines and booster shots, we see even schools reopening. Children who were glued to the screens for their classes, assignments, and even exams now have to start their schools again. Yes, there has been quite a mixed reaction, excitement, laziness, sadness, all in one. But at the same time, reopening of schools this time should be taken as an opportunity to promote zero tolerance towards violence and any such related activity in school premises. These are quite tendencies seen in kids, and if the root cause is not addressed on time, its manifestations will continue to so high till it will get very difficult to control the repercussions, which can be witnessed as unhealthy behavior patterns. And to throw more light on this topic of controlling violence and reopening of schools, on the panel today we have Ms. Sudipta Chatterjee, Ms. Shruti Agarwal, and sorry for the inconvenience, but due to some emergency, Dr. Neelam could not join. So we have Ms. Gunjan, who will be joining us in another few minutes. Ms. Sudipta Chatterjee has been teaching English at Delhi Public School, Arkipuram, New Delhi since the past 17 years. She has done her bachelor's and master's in English from Delhi University and also her B.Ed and MPhil in English. She's a CBSE Master Trainer for Competency-Based Education and Global Master Trainer of All India Educators Forum. She's the founder and leader of Google Educators Group, Kolkata, and is also a certified Google Educator Level 2. Ms. Shruti Agarwal, she's a clinical psychologist, social worker, human rights activist, and an artist who is the owner at Umang_Your Safe Space. She has diligently worked in the field of psychology for 5 years and has been affiliated with many private and government organizations in Gujarat, Delhi, and Bangalore. She has worked as a school counselor and has delivered her services at family court as well. She's an expert in helping people through crisis, family difficulties, children's emotional and behavioral difficulties, adult mental health concerns, geriatric issues, and end-of-life mental health concerns. Ms. Gunjan Joshi, she's a clinical psychologist, an enterprising leader, and mental health advocate with her ability to motivate people towards change and adaptive behaviors. She completed her BA of Psychology from Jesus and Mary College, Delhi University, and MSc in Clinical Psychology from Christ University, Bangalore. Further, she successfully achieved her MPhil in Clinical Psychology from King George's Medical University, Lucknow. During her educational years, she attended various workshops and has also worked at numerous esteemed hospitals like Manipal, Sakra World Hospital, Wimhans Wellbeing Special School, Cadabams, and Astitwa, Bangalore. Thank you so much to all our panelists for taking out time to join us for this webinar. A few instructions before we start with the webinar. First, we will have a round of discussion with our panelists, following with a question answer round. We request the audience to drop in their questions in the question answer box. We will be taking up live questions, and the 2 best live sharpest questions of the day winners will get gift vouchers worth ₹500. Additionally, we request the audience not to fill the chat box with unnecessary messages. We may tend to miss out the important questions. So with this, we start with the webinar. And before we go into the depth of this topic, let's understand something very basic. Since violence is too intense for a word and too deep, especially when it comes to talking about kids, How can you explain the types of violence one sees in schools with children? How can we categorize it, and what are the all types which we see to witness?
Shall I go first, Meghal?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
All right. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. And thank you for the warm welcome. So I think we would perhaps use the word aggression and, how we see aggression amongst school students, which is sometimes definitely a matter of concern for us. And you see, aggression also can be due to a lot of factors.
Yeah.
And these factors can be perhaps the situation at home. So sometimes we don't know what the situation is.
Definitely.
And that definitely impacts them. And they would perhaps showcase this aggression in the form of physical violence. Or in some cases, it could be verbal. And that children are interacting on the internet these days. So cyberbullying has also become a very major issue and concern. So we basically need to understand what is the trigger behind this kind of aggression in the classroom. And you see, sometimes it also happens that we are interacting with children coming from different backgrounds. That becomes a problem too, because they feel that perhaps they have been deprived of certain things which perhaps the other students in the class might have an advantage or a privilege. And that becomes a problem. So we tend to see these kinds of aggression in children. And you see, there are times, especially when you see this in adolescents and teenagers, that they are not able to understand how to express themselves. And when they're not able to express themselves, it comes out in the form of violence or aggression. And there are times you would find, and it's a very unique thing, and we as teachers have observed it, even if it's not a physical form, sometimes it's a very passive form. Like I remember giving a poetry writing competition in class. And so there is this one child who would always write something which is always negative, very dark. So over a period of time, I had to actually talk to her and ask her that what's happening, and why is it that it's always something very dark, something very negative. And so one realizes that there are other factors and reasons. She didn't want to express herself, so through the medium of poetry it came out. So we as teachers, we try to through observation, we try to identify cases like this. And then there are times, Meghal, we are not able to handle situations when it becomes out of control, because we as teachers, we perhaps focusing on the academic aspect, the extracurricular aspects. Then that's the time we then have to consult the counselors. And we have eminent the panelists today are all counselors, clinical psychologists, who are definitely the people we go to. But then again, I think you realize that sometimes that's also a stigma factor for them. A lot of children do not want to go, and you would have seen that in school. And they would categorically say that, ma'am, please don't tell me in class that I have to go meet the counselor. So they don't want people to get to know about it. So I feel somewhere, if we are able to identify that there is a problem, then we can do something about it. But sometimes even parents are in denial. They don't want to accept that there is an issue. They just want to brush it under the carpet. Nahi, ma'am, ho jayega, samajh jayega, manage ho jayega. That becomes a problem, because there is no acceptance. And if there's no acceptance, then there's no way we as teachers, we as counselors, or as school authorities can help. That's where the intervention of the counselors is important, I feel, because they are able to then bring that connect between parents and teachers, that this is the issue, so let's handle it together.
Ma'am, I think you spoke about one very important point, that's the trigger. And most of the times it's very underlying issue, one cannot see it on the surface. And continuing same, Ms. Shruti, you are from a psychology background.
Correct.
If you can focus on what are the types of triggers and what are those underlying things which one cannot see through naked eyes, but it's still present.
As Suvippa ma'am has said that there are a lot of triggers that sometimes the teachers, although they can see that the child is triggered through art forms or something, it generally goes unnoticed by teachers in a classroom setting when a teacher has a responsibility to take care of so many children. So, and that's why teachers need the help of counselors, school counselors or professionals to take care of the problem. But again, as ma'am said, that it is a stigma. Going to a counselor is a stigma for the children, for the students, and they somehow feel apprehensive that if the peers will come to know that they have to go to the counselor, they will think them, they will be
I think there's some.
weak or maybe losers. I don't know. I don't want. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Now you're audible. There was some connection issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the challenge is how to destigmatizing going to a counselor. That is the biggest challenge. So when I was working earlier in GD Goenka Surat, we were organizing a lot of destigmatizing going to a counselor seminars and webinars later during the pandemic. And that really helped normalizing going to a counselor. And we even started motivating teachers to come visit to the counselor, because once the authorities start utilizing a service provided by the school, it automatically gets destigmatized or normalized. And it becomes more approachable. So, Sudipta ma'am, you can probably advise your administration at DPS to do the same or to conduct the similar strategies to break the stigma in within the school segment, because it really worked at GD Goenka Surat. Moving ahead, Meghal, your question: what are the triggers of aggression? So there are three principal triggers of aggression, or instead of calling it triggers, let us call it determinants of aggression. There are three main determinants of aggression. One, there is social determinants. Social from our environment. There are environmental factors that result in certain reactions that come across as aggression. Second determinants are personal determinants. These determinants are personal, that is genetic in nature. They are personal biological factors that cause aggression. These can be like these can be personality types. These can be the things that the children have learned in their environment and that they have incorporated in their mannerism. And then the third type of aggression is, just a second, I said social, I said personal, and the third type is situational determinants of aggression. Okay, moving on to the social determinants of aggression. As I said, these are the environmental factors that causes triggers to aggression. Few common types of triggers of or social determinants of aggression are frustration. Second is provocation. Then there is something called displaced aggression. There is exposure to media violence. Then heightened arousal, sexual arousal and aggression. I think sexual arousal and aggression right now, due to the cyberspace and overexposure to media violence, sexual arousal are two very important things that we will be discussing today, right? Okay, so going to frustration, not getting what you want, the question is, can frustration always lead to aggression or aggressive reaction? So first of all, we need to understand what frustration is. Suppose a child did not get what they wanted, and they felt that, okay, suppose they wanted, like ma'am said earlier, that there is a lot of comparison in the schools. Okay, I have this, I don't have this, my friend has an iPhone and they have an iPad, and this kind of comparison usually causes frustration in students. And nowadays, getting access to these phones and gadgets is a very cool thing. So it's not necessary that people from all socioeconomic backgrounds have accessibility to all these means. So it becomes very important that teachers and parents teach our children to be tolerant to any kind of frustration. And there are studies that have happened in the field of social psychology that have said that it is not quintessential that frustration always give rise to aggressive reactions. Yes, it is a very precursory source of or reason of aggression, but a lot of the times frustration also manifests positively, as in ma'am, so Dipta ma'am, you must have noticed in your classroom environment that there must be students who, when faced with problems, they go into a problem solving strategy mode. So frustration can a lot of the times lead to problem solving methods also. So it is important that we as parents and teachers normalize that it is okay not to have it all. It is okay to be frustrated. You don't need to react emotionally or impulsively to any frustration, and we react to these frustrations with a rational mind, with a clean mind, with a thought oriented mind. And that is one very important way that frustration can teach us to be problem solver rather than reacting with aggression. So coming to provocation, so many a times I have noticed in my experience as school counselor that provocations by to a specific person. There, everybody tries to bully him, and he's a passive one. And hello.
Yes, ma'am. There was a lag in your video and audio. I think it stopped because of network issue. It's happening in the middle quite a lot of times.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, ma'am. Now you're audible. You can go on. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So as I was saying that the provocation, there is always a stronger personality in a class, and then there is this personality statistically who has a tendency to be a scapegoat. And it is seen that smaller provocations get retaliated with like smaller provocations get dealt or retaliated with a higher aggressive reaction. What I'm trying to say is that suppose somebody is being verbally abusive to a child continuously, tolerate it, trying to ignore it, there will eventually come a time, and he is not reporting it to his authorities that he is being verbally abused, and he is trying to take charge of the problem. There will eventually come a time when he will retaliate more aggressively, and he will probably lash out in a more unacceptable manner. Now, because that overt expression of aggression is more overtly observed by teachers, this child gets scolded for his expression of aggression. So of course, it is hard for a teacher to keep track of every source of aggression, but sometimes it becomes more important to keep track of agents who provoke certain kind of behaviors, and then punish the provoker as well as the person who has initiated the aggressive action, because in the long term, aggressive expression should be discouraged in a classroom setting. So it should be, instead of being discouraged in a more form of punishment that is more harsh in terms of humiliation or expressed humiliation way, more logical way. And the child should be given the reason of the punishment rather than just punishing and humiliating the child. So that was the provocation factor, subdeterminant of social provocation. Then there is something called displaced aggression that happens mostly in workplace settings and may happen in children. victim of mummy और सासू माँ चिल्लाई, and then वो गुस्सा वो मम्मी या पापा दबा गए, and जब घर पे बच्चों के सामने आए तो चिल्ला दिए. So this is the example of displaced aggression, and this happens in all of the times. So this is another issue. This is another determinant of aggression, social determinant of aggression. And then, as I said, media violence and sexual arousal and aggression, these are the two topics that really needs to be discussed in more detail, for which I would urge the Sudipta ma'am, because she's a teacher, to maybe recall from her experiences examples of media exposure and how they were shown to cause anger expression in the classroom settings. So, ma'am.
Right. So I think the violent video games of late have become a major issue, because that tends to make them a lot more aggressive in by nature. And also what we find is you'll find that violence, or rather the aggression, is also more to do with how certain how the gender roles have been typicasted. How men should not cry, and you have to show your manliness, and things like that. So even though in the classroom we do have debates on gender roles and how how things are changing, you do find that unfortunately a lot of what you see on the media, social media, and otherwise also on on online platforms and movies in general, you find that they keep on reiterating this aspect. So we seem to be kind of stuck in a loop, and we can't seem to be coming out of that circle at all. So on one level we are progressing ahead, but then because of these certain factors, it seems like we are stuck in the loop. We're not able to come out of it, and those ideas keep getting embedded in the child's mind, and he or she wants to behave in that manner because society or the social conditioning has been such that they are tempted to be the way society wants you to behave. And that becomes a bit of a problem. So there you realize that it is a constant endeavor, not just of teachers and school, but also of parents, who need to monitor that behavior at home, and also be very, very particular about the kind of programs that the children are exposed to. So in school, we can definitely have discussions, which we do, and we tell them what kind of programs one should be watching, and we sensitize them. There is gender sensitization, which is very, very important. But then again, when they go back home, and if they're exposed to these kind of movies or these kind of series, that becomes a problem. So here I feel that the intervention of both the school authorities as well as the parents is very important.
Ma'am, you spoke before this. Actually, we were talking about destigmatization of psychological and counselors in middle. Don't you think that before destigmatization, I think parents should, and teachers also, but I think mostly parents, they should accept and they should know where is the requirement of such intervention, because there are
Absolutely.
many times parents don't know ki or our child is actually suffering from something or there is some cause, and like you mentioned, हाँ ठीक है हो जाएगा. This is one mindset which we see in parents. So what is the role of parents when it comes to this, and especially when they interact with you during parent-teacher meetings and everything?
You'll be amazed to know this, Meghal. At times we feel we are now counseling the parents more than the students.
It's required, I
So
guess.
this stigma actually is there in the minds of the parents and the child, that if they're going to a counselor, it's a problem. Whereas the school encourages that, no, this is important, because there are times when the situation becomes out of control. And we as teachers, I think over a period of time, with experience, we realize that there are certain issues, there are some behavioral conditions, there are certain learning disabilities because of which the child requires that he or she needs to go to the counselor. So we as teachers, we understand that. But to be able to convince the parents and the child that this is important, it's not a stigma, that I feel will still take a little bit of time. And more than the child, I feel of late it's the parents who require more counseling, and it's the parents who need to be feel assured that it's not something negative or something bad. There's nothing wrong with the child. Like if I have a problem in my leg or my lower back, which I have currently, I need to go to the doctor, right? I am going to the doctor. I'm saying that, yes, I have a problem. There is pain, so I'm going. Similarly, if I have certain issues which I'm not able to control, and which requires some kind of medical help, then there is no stigma attached to it. You need to be accepting that as well. So this will take some time, but it's good to know that we do see a change in trend, because we see a lot of parents now who are open to the idea of, yes, we need to consult the counselor, and children also becoming open to the idea that, okay, it's not a bad thing if I'm going to a counselor. It will help me, or perhaps help me identify where the issue is, and help me become, a better student in class, or better behaved, so that there is an acceptance even in the peer group, and those issues can be handled.
Yeah.
Adding to this point, ma'am, if it is okay, destigmatizing going to a counselor can also come when we, sensitize students towards this concept of empathy or feeling for others. So there is a system of education for kindergarten students called Montessori system. In the Montessori system, I understand that two or three students of different age groups are educated together, and in the process it is expected and I think a partnership is made of a younger child and an elder child, where the elder child is kind of is acting like an elder sibling to the younger child, and the idea is that this will instill concept of empathy even at schools, because this is happening in sibling at home when there is an elder and a younger sibling, although there are a lot of single child families these days. But this is the sole idea of Montessori style of education. So giving sensitizing people towards empathy, that is, feeling trying to feel how the other one is feeling, rather than pitying the other's weaknesses, because being pitied is not the healthy way of addressing the problem. Rather than feeling and try to solving the problem and not labeling the child with his weaknesses is the more healthy way to deal with the child's problem. And a lot of CBSE schools I've seen, even GD Goenka did it, and even Navratna in Baroda did it, inclusive styles of education, where in every junior class there was a children with special child, one or two children maybe with autism spectrum, or maybe with intellectual disability. So that way, in that way, the other students would become more sensitive to the needs of these children, and naturally the teacher would also become sensitive to the needs of this child. And then, as I pressed earlier, that if the management and the teachers, because teachers a lot of the times have a lot of stressors at home as well as in class, and specifically during the pandemic, because of the online sessions, they were all the more stressed. And now the parents are also stressed because of multiple roles they had to play during the pandemic, of a nurturer, of a food provider, of a nurse, of a, I don't know, 10,000 things, a teacher, of a discipliner. And so in that method, going visiting counselor, when okay to normalize to go to attend the services of a counselor, you know uh, going going political on this one, because of our Indian caste system, jhadu lagana was something that was वर्कड अपॉन, सफाई नहीं करना, ये नहीं करना, वो नहीं करना. तो वो झाड़ू लगाने का पूरा आंदोलन लगा था. दैट was a process. Safai, remember what was that? So that was sensitizing the population of India to the importance of hygiene, civic hygiene, keep maintaining civic hygiene. So I'm deviating from the topic, coming back, in counselor services. And well, it is a holistic work of teachers and counselors and the management. And group में काम करेंगे तो उसका fruitful effect आएगा.
Well, I agree. There's one very common thing, which is usually discussed in the society. I don't know how, true it is that, and I would like to ask actually, ma'am, Sudeepta ma'am, you see in classroom settings, that is it true that males are more engaged in violence compared to girl students? And because that is a way that boys express their anger or frustration. So if it is, and what are the ways in which girls express this form of violence? I mean, how do they went out, and what is the difference that is seen?
Right. Yes, I think I would agree to that, because in most cases we do find that the boys are more prone to showing physical violence, and they would perhaps get into arguments, altercations, which can lead to fights, which we don't see so much in girls. But it's not like girls can't be violent. They can be equally violent.
Yeah.
Perhaps not showcase it in the form of physical violence, but theirs is a more the aggression is a very subtle one. So things like spreading rumors, trying to kind of say bad things about people, so that kind of that vengeance kind of a thing, that she did this to me, or he did that to me, so now I have to get back. So I feel that is even more difficult to manage, because that's like they're using their own psyche to kind of manipulate a lot of things, and and are indulging in all kinds of these wrong practices. So that also has to be managed and dealt with very carefully. So see, physical violence is different, because you're seeing the fight happening, and like ma'am had mentioned about the triggers, who is the provocator, who's being provocated. Once you've identified that, it's easier to handle, I would say. But something like this, where you are not expressing yourself, you're not communicating, but everything is going on in your mind, and you are like sometimes they make fake profiles, and send certain pictures or something to somebody and get somebody else into trouble. So there are different types of things that they can actually end up doing, which is a little which can get a little problematic. So it depends. Yes, I would say that if you look at the gender roles all over the world, also if you see violence by default, you would find the physical kind of violence is something that you would majority of the times find men indulging in, boys indulging in. But it's not like girls don't indulge in it. I think ma'am would be able to tell us more better.
Yeah, so I was adding to it. Ma'am is very aptly noticing these two types of aggression, and just giving terminology and characteristics, names to these two kinds of aggression makes it easy for the viewers to understand. So the former kind of aggression that ma'am psychologists have called it hostile aggression. So hostile aggression is more impulsive aggression, where it is more physical, more violent. And as ma'am has said, that even girls participate in aggression, not necessarily hostile. It is more verbal, more communicative. The second type of aggression is instrumental aggression. It is not with an intent to cause harm to the person, to the samne wala, but it is the intention is something else, to achieve something else. It can be defaming the other person by verbal rumors, that women usually do it. And let's not discount the fact that men don't engage in this kind of aggression, because a lot of politicians at the end of the time, they are men, so they also engage in this kind of instrumental aggression. And just that women are discouraged to be overtly aggressive is because, and specifically with men, they can be physically aggressive with women, and the popular terminology is cat fight, but they don't end up being more hostile, physically hostile with men, because A, it is socially unacceptable, and B, men are more stronger than women, specifically after a point of time. So it is just natural and more intelligent way to cope with life, to not express in hostile ways of aggression with the other gender, the more physically strong gender. And yes, Meghal, Dr. Meghal, I wanted to share why men have, because there was a question why men are more aggressive, more tendencies to be aggressive than women. There is actually an evolutionary perspective and evolutionary spin towards it, and for which I actually wanted to share a video. Is that okay?
Ma'am, if you can, I don't know if you have the right.
Can I share? Is there a way to share the link? It's a YouTube link.
No, I guess all you can do is you can share it in the chat.
I can share screen. I can share my screen and I can open it on my.
Yeah, ma'am, you can please go ahead. But I don't.
Is my screen being shared now?
Ma'am, I don't think you can share the screen. All you can do is you can drop the link in the chat box and you can discuss about it so that our audience then will see it after the this webinar. That's all. I think it's possible. You can just tell a gist about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so going to the evolutionary perspective of why men are more hostile than women. So there is one thing that one is to safeguard their patriarchal, they fight for, two men fight for mates, for mates, and for to transfer their genes to the other generation, and they fight for resources. And this is a common pattern of behavior in a lot of animals in nature, like horses also do it, monkeys also do it, and we men have also been doing it. So men, human beings and men are more prone to more hostile behavior, to say to, because they're limited resources, and they fight for resources and they fight for me. And the one who wins the fight actually ends up with the rewards of better mates and better resources, and they end up being more powerful. So there is an evolutionary perspective to why men are more aggressive than women. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am, it surely does. And actually, personally, I would say it's very interesting. I could never think that, those things which girls engage in is a form of violence which has to be addressed. I really thought it's just kiddish behavior by them, but I think it reflects their mental state a lot. And if we talk about the mental state, ma'am, you see in school settings, the people and the children, rather say, who are inflicted upon that violence, be it physical violence, verbal violence, or whatever kind of thing you use, is it reflected in their academics as well? And how are they in school? And how can we see, what is their state of mind?
Women's state of mind when they cannot express hostile aggression, is that your question?
No, ma'am, I generally wanted to know, that the children who are inflicted upon, not being gender based, but a guy or a girl, any student who is a victim of, be it verbal or physical or any sort of violence and abuse. So how are their personalities reflected, and how is it reflected in their academics or their extracurriculars or their interaction with peers or their absenteeism in school? That what's the effect of that?
Okay, I understood your question. Well, you are trying to ask what is the mindset of a person who's a victim of aggression or a group of aggression. So no, the mindset is obviously he's scared, he's anxious. A lot of the times he's not communicative to his authorities. He's a passive person, and I'm not sure if he's able to. So it can the effect on the mindset of the victim can be multifactorial, because it depends on the personality of the person. Is he a person who at one point would break or just go in his depressive state of mind, and in a non action oriented space, or he will either spring up and start become action oriented, but usually it is seen that people who have a tendency to become action oriented, a less anxious person, gets bullied, but to only the bullies get discouraged by them. So mostly the people who end up getting, the students who end up bullied are more anxious type of personalities, who are passive, who are quiet, and who don't know how to express their problems to their authorities. So of course the mental state that they may be in is quite detrimental to their work, to their entire development as a person. And it should be encouraged in schools that, you know, such children should be noticed and should be situated with a partner who's more empathetic to this person. So that's how a class teacher can manage, strategize to safeguard the needs of this person as well.
Yeah, ma'am, you mentioned anxious type of personality, and at the same time, I think Sujita ma'am, if you can tell me, how do you see the behavior patterns of these students in classroom settings?
So you see, Meghal, what happens is, when you're observing a class, there are these telltale signs with which you can understand that there's something happening. So you find someone who's otherwise an extrovert, suddenly you feel they've gone into a shell. They're not interacting in class. They're not participating as much as they used to. And it's easy. I think I speak for the teaching community. Like over a period of time, even though we have a class of 40-45 students, when we look at them, we're able to identify, okay, there is some issue. So I think the first step is taken by the teacher, class teacher, the subject teacher, because you need to first of all, call the student out. And that also, Meghal, I feel has to be done very subtly. Like I would probably say, can you just come out and just get this assignments from the staff room. So take the child out, not letting the other children know that there is some issue I have identified. I can't let that
consciousness. True.
Exactly. So take them out and then generally have a chit chat and say, what have you been doing? And you did not participate in the debate. I was really looking forward to it because I thought you would volunteer for it. So slowly and steadily, that's the first step. Like we as teachers, the academic teachers, we first of all identify what the issue is. Then of course talk, and when we feel that it's something very serious where perhaps the parental intervention is required, then I speak to the parents, I talk to them, try to find out if there is something that's happened at home, or there are times when parents have no idea what's happening. So then we try to find out what has happened, what is the trigger, what is the source, and then we try to the minute the child feels that there is somebody they can talk to, they can communicate, they can share, and you are the confidant, then it helps. And Meghal, a lot of times you'll also have students coming and telling us, ma'am, please don't tell our parents. So, you have to deal with that as well. And that also has to be done in a very subtle manner. They don't want any other teacher to know. They don't want anybody else to know. You're the only confidant. So you'll have to also, as a teacher, I also have to assess how serious the situation is. Because there are times when you are worried that the child might harm himself or herself. So then it is important that I have to inform the parents some way or the other that they need to monitor the child at home and things like that. But yes, once the source is identified, the issue is identified, if we are able to deal with it, then you will find the change. It is going to be gradual, but you see that the child is, coming back. And then of course the teachers involve them in activities, try to kind of bring them back to how they used to be, or give them roles and responsibilities that, okay, this is something you have to do. Involve them in a manner that is not very obvious to the other children, but it's very subtle that, okay, this is just, ma'am is trying out different students and things like that. So I think it's a gradual process, but we've done it in school as teachers, as counselors, and we've been able to help them out.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but I think now we have a third panelist also. Ms. Gunjan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, hello, welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for welcoming me.
We were in the midst of the discussion of opening school safety and talking about the violent behavior patterns. And
Right.
Ms. Shruti Agarwal and Ms. Sudipta ma'am have already covered a lot of things.
Okay.
To continue, I think I would like if you could give your input as psychology background. the types of means what have you observed or what have you seen or known as the types of violent behaviors which are seen in students and their root cause, or how have you dealt with it when you came across such situations in your professional life?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say hello to everybody. Hello, Shruti ma'am. Hello, Sadhita ma'am. And Meghal, hello. Thank you for putting me here. Okay. So, before I start on talking about this, I know you have already been speaking about this topic now.
Yeah.
But as far as my experience with students have been concerned, I feel that uh, violence is an issue which needs to be dealt in a holistic way. Okay, so when I talk about being holistic, it's not just the teacher's responsibility, not just the advices that we give to a student itself, but also the parent at the parental at the home level. Okay, so a lot of times it is the child learns such behavior from the house, the setup itself, and then there's a lot of passive aggression built in the child, which he is not able to deal with. And that is why we tell students that, for example, why do we tell parents that engage your child in some hobby? In a way, we talk about the defense mechanism of sublimation. Why do we talk about that? It's because sometimes there are some impulses which are pent up in the child, and that has to be dealt in a healthy manner. So, for example, a child who is feeling very aggressive, okay, who is violent, who is actually engaging in such behavior. So, probably channelizing that energy. Say a parent can put that child to a boxing class or to a wrestling class where he knows that that energy is being went out somewhere, and that is not doing harm to himself or the others. First of all, that is a very important thing that we teach to parents these days, because psychoeducation on the part of parents becomes very, very important. They feel that generally the mentality of parents is that if we are sending the child to the school, our role is over. The school is taking on the responsibility of the child, and when the child is coming back home, that is it. He is learning or she is learning from the school, and that is where they put a full stop to it. So the parent needs to be educated that the child is learning not only from the school, but also from the environment that is there, that's at the house. A lot of times the child's feelings are left unacknowledged. They don't feel that there is somebody whom I can express my emotions to. Or, they are not validated, they are not listened to. So I actually tell parents when I'm psychoeducating them that there should be a circle time where you should actually allow the child to speak, to actually say whatever he wants to, be it a negative emotion, be it a positive emotion, be it whatever emotion it is, it should come on the plate. Because as far as the child will not say what he is actually feeling, he will not name the feeling altogether, we will never be able to deal with it. Okay. So the basic thing is, let the child be free, let the child come across with whatever he is feeling. And a lot of parents will bring on their judgment ki, if you're feeling this way, this is wrong. That is what we are told. ये feel कर रहे हो तो गलत feel कर रहे हो. If you're feeling this way, it is bad. You should not feel this way. But that is not the approach with which we actually teach our child. Like, if you want the child to be brought up in a way that is healthy, or even expressing the emotion, anger, for example, if we talk about anger, we were talking about violence altogether in this webinar. Anger is a very, very basic emotion which is built up in everybody, right? But the way that I'm delivering my anger, the way in which it is coming across to people, that is something we need to look upon. For example, some people will engage in self-harm. That is also an expression of anger. Some will probably abuse and start shouting. That is also it's an output of how that emotion is being dealt with. So on a very basic level, you should actually teach children that verbalize your feelings, write your feelings, come up with ways in which those emotions can be handled in a very adaptive and healthy way. Okay, there is sometimes the parents will teach, or the school will teach, don't do this because this is wrong, don't say such things. They come up with such labels that this is wrong. There is nothing wrong and right. It is just the way you approach it, and it is just the way you express it outwardly. That is what is important. One of the major issues that I've seen with schools these days is bullying. because that is a form of passive aggression. Again, if the child is not able to, keep their emotions in a healthy way, the person will resort to bullying others. कि मेरे साथ ऐसा हुआ है, मैं अपने expression या emotions express नहीं कर पाया हूँ, तो अब मैं दूसरों को trouble करूँगा. That is again a form of passive violence, which needs to be dealt with. So all of these subtle things which parents ignore, or the teachers, or the, I'm not actually blaming anybody here, but it's actually how the system has been built now. कि अगर ये है तो ये गलत है, ये है तो ये सही है. This distinction between right and wrong, which is taught to us from the very beginning, needs to be worked upon. How do you channelize a child's emotion? How do you deal with it becomes very, very important. We actually see, if we are in a home setup, we feel कि अगर किसी ने कुछ गलत काम करा है तो उसको थप्पड़ लगा दो, ठीक है, उसको टॉन्ट कर दो, उसको मार दो. They feel that this is the way of how things can be dealt with, and the child reciprocates that. We talk about vicarious learning. That is how the child will carry that behavior forward. कि आगे अगर ऐसा कुछ हुआ, he does not like something that the other person is saying to him, he'll do the same thing that he's seeing at home, right? So these are the little things. So acknowledge the child, make the child feel that you're important, you are being listened to. Okay, your feelings are validated, even if it's anger, even if it's a negative emotion. We together we will deal with, we will come up with a way in which these emotions can be actually channelized in a healthy form, rather than coming out in a way that is named by the society as wrong, or the child is behaving in a wrong way. That is something that we need to look into. And the violence issue, when we specifically talk about it, it comes from when the child feels मेरा self esteem तो कुछ रहा ही नहीं है, nobody is actually giving importance to me. So that is the child's behavior of seeking attention. Sometimes they'll engage in violence कि अगर मैं ऐसा behavior करूंगा, then parents will look after me. They will actually see that there is some underlying problem, and they will pay importance to me. These are few issues that I've come across very recently, especially in the adolescent age. People feel कि अगर मैं violent होऊंगा, वैसे तो मुझे attention नहीं मिलता है, वैसे तो nobody is paying attention to me. So if I engage in some destructive behavior or a violent behavior, maybe then somebody will look after me. Maybe then they will show their concerns towards me. So the reinforcement part is not left these days. They feel कि punishment होगा तभी सब कुछ होगा. Reinforcement doesn't exist a term these days with adolescent kids, is what I feel.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, before you also, we discussed mostly the role of parents in this entire,
Right.
how they have to be given importance, how they should know and be aware about it. And
Yes.
same time, we mentioned about channelizing an anger and not labeling it as right or wrong, because you never know.
Exactly. Right.
And yes, the entire purpose of this webinar is to understand how to prevent this violence in school setting. So since you have started talking about channelizing the anger, I would like to know the point of view of our other panelists as well, that what can be the other intervention measures? She spoke about channelizing it in some sort of way. What are the other intervention measures which one can, include to prevent or minimize, I would say rather, patterns?
As Gunjan ma'am has very rightly said about home environment and vicarious learning. Towards the end of the segment, I was going to move to these points where healthy attachment styles should be given to a child. By attachment styles, the secure attachment style, which is manifested by healthy parenting techniques, such as is it authoritative or authoritarian? Is it where it is more democratic and discussion oriented strategies, such as circle time, like Gunjan ma'am said, that
Yes, ma'am. It's authoritative parenting with supportive and as well as establishing a boundary. Right.
So such kind of practices give secure attachment to the child from a very young age, and this kind of sets them prepares them for the challenges of the world. They give them a more autonomous personality where they develop more hands-on approach to problem solving rather than passive approach. So they feel in control of their actions and therefore stay rational. And then whenever the frustration comes in their environment, they because they have become through their secure attachment styles more autonomous personalities, instead of showing hostile aggression, they become more instrumental in solving their problem. So Gunjan ma'am over here has very aptly suggested the ways we can manage and minimize the aggression in children, and also parents, because sometimes parents, because when we come to family therapy, a lot of the times couples also engage and they go on engaging for 10, 15, 20 years in very unhealthy patterns of communication. Obviously school cannot do everything, but
Right.
workshops, separate workshops for parents that can be held by counselors, where they can teach the parents healthy communicative styles, because when the parents start engaging in healthy communicative styles, that is what will become a role model for or an example for their children, and
Yes.
that will be translated into the classroom environment. So this will be the approach to handle aggression.
Definitely, ma'am. One more point, ma'am, that I would like to add here is also that adolescent is such an age where they are engaging in a lot of gadget time. Okay, so
Correct.
limiting their actually monitoring and limiting. We are not saying we cannot take control over any adolescent, because they're such an age, such a critical age where you can't control them any, like, no more. That is not there. But actually limiting the time on the screen that they see. And by that, I do not mean that watching a comedy program or watching a family movie altogether, but the violent content they are seeing. Okay, games like PUBG or games which are violent, they are having access to it, and there is no monitoring done on that part. That is also contributing to a lot of aggression which is inbuilt, and that will somehow spill, because a sponge also has a capacity to take something. Okay, after that, after some point, that will also drip. Okay, so the parent need to address that ki, theek hai, if a child is watching this, there has to be an hour to it. Ki for half an hour you can play this. Not like you're binging it on the entire day, and then towards the end of the day, what is the result of it? The pent up aggression, which will spill in some other way. So that is a very important aspect, that limiting the time that you are actually giving to such platforms or such activities that you are engaging in. Okay, be it a healthy activity, that's a separate thing, but something that's adding to the pent up aggression and violent activity will never be justified by any means, because that will show in their behavior altogether. And when we talk about problem solving, like now when we are actually saying ki ye issue chal raha hai, how to solve it, when we say about solving it, there are very very basic problem solving techniques that we can teach our children. Okay, generally we should like, if I talk about my experience, I say we should actually teach them distress tolerance, that instead of making the situation worse, the situation is there. Okay, you're going through a lot in your life. Okay, there are a lot of n number of factors that are bothering you, but violence is not the only resort to it. There are other techniques as well which we can use to deal with conflict in itself. Okay, so that is there. Teaching children those tips can be helpful, and for that matter, there's a whole module designed for distress tolerance which we need to cater to children. And this is not just the parent's responsibility, but this should be a part of the curriculum itself. Like we give a period to PE period, we give period, we assign classes like that. PE period hai to physical education period hai, there is this to ye wala period hai. There should be something known as a skill enhancement class, where we actually talk about dealing with such issues which children today are facing on a daily basis, and violence being a prominent one that is there. So this is what I feel, that conflict resolution can only happen when children are taught, because this is one age where children are actually struggling कि हम करें क्या. Issue उनको पता है, the solution they don't know. So for that, somebody needs to intervene, and that somebody has to be a person who knows how to deliver it to students in a way that they understand. So we will have to come down to their understanding level. ठीक है, अगर मैं अभी बात कर रही हूँ, I am explaining things like vicarious learning, reinforcement, ये children will not understand this. We will have to come down to their level of understanding and teach them कि देखो ये तरीका है. सिर्फ violence की जगह you can also engage when you feel the urge to just hit somebody. Probably you can engage in a skill known as tip. We talk about tip. That's a distress tolerance tip. Now that they will understand when we actually teach them. देखो इसमें ये होता है, इसमें ये होता है. That is where when we talk about conflict resolution. That is when we talk about violence being dealt in a healthy way. That is when we talk about their aggression going down from a scale of 10 to say 5. At least there will be a change in a direction. And this we will have to do along with parents, because टीचर्स अपना रोल करके घर चले गए, लेकिन फॉलो अप किसने करना है? The follow up will be at home. Again, the environment that is being given to the child altogether. If we are teaching the child this in school, but that is not being followed at home, the child will again come back to zero. There will be no progress at all. So this is something that needs to be looked upon. But these are certain very, very basic things that we need to educate the parent as well as the child, because it's a holistic work. It has to be two-way. It is a teamwork. It is teacher, it is student, it is parent. And at a society level also, we need to conduct workshops to promote, these are the issues that are there and these need to be dealt with, because if not now, this will become something which will get out of control. And then we will be only playing a blame game. कि तुम्हारी वजह से हुआ, इसकी वजह से हुआ, ये हुआ. So these are subtleties which need to be dealt with, is what I feel. And the role of the psychologist and the teachers becomes very, very important at this point of time. How do we deliver it to teachers? How do teachers deliver it to students and the parents? That is what I wanted to say.
Yes, we all have, like we spoke about, that parents have a much more major role, but
Right.
the number of hours in which the students interact with their peers or are like Sudeepta ma'am, you gave an example about talking to a child individually about and trying to find out what is he or she going through. But any initiatives which are taken, like Gunjan ma'am mentioned, as a part of a school curriculum to minimize or to do such things, or if not, what can be, according to you, certain things which should be included in as a part of the curriculum to such things?
Right. So you see, Meghal, we already have things like the value education period, and literature becomes a very strong point. Like I'm an English teacher, so literature becomes a very strong point for me to hold discussions and debates in class, where very smartly and very subtly I can pick up the issues in the classroom, and through stories and through different ways, like even theater, I can actually bring out the problems and let the children understand and solve those issues at their own level. So we're already doing that as part of curriculum, because we do believe in this holistic kind of an education, where we're also trying to cater to the needs of the children, especially when there is some kind of violent behavior or aggressive behavior, and we try to control it. And through peer learning, it's amazing how there is more sensitization, there's more empathy, and I've observed that there has been a sea change in in the students when they have interacted in this manner. So yes, we already have those provisions, but yes, it has to be perhaps done up in a manner where like sometimes we do, like in the audiovisual hall, we call all the children, and then we have the counselors who then address them as a group, so that issues are talked about, and then the teachers are not there. It's just the counselor and the children. So whatever problems, issues they are facing, they talk about it, and it's as if they're collectively speaking, but nobody's there who's eavesdropping. That's also very essential. So they feel like, okay, now we can voice our opinions, we can talk things out. So we do give them opportunities like that in school, where they are able to communicate, talk. And we also have the system of the school the student representatives. So they are very, very important and crucial, because then the issues that are there, which we as teachers might not get to know, they bring it up, they inform us, they tell us that this is what's happening. Then they seek our suggestion and guidance as to how to go about it. And a lot of times you'll find that the children themselves are taking the initiative of solving the peer issues and problems, and even any kind of aggression that they might have noticed. So I think this kind of behavior needs to be encouraged in schools, so that through peer learning, these issues can be dealt with in a more effective manner.
There's another question. I mean, before we end this webinar, there's one question which I personally wanted to know. We spoke about parents interacting and they not accepting at the end of the day that our child has an issue, right? So is there genetic involvement? Is there a role of genes that such behavior patterns are coming from their parents only? And I think before addressing the child, the parent needs to understand that somewhere or the other, he is or she is like me, and there is an issue which needs to be addressed. So, if Gunjan, now if you can talk about, is there any, do you think, is there any genetic involvement or heredity which a parent especially needs to focus on?
Okay. So when we talk about a behavior, okay, we do not say it is all nurture. Okay, we say it is nature versus nurture, right? So when we talk about such behaviors, there are certain traits which are already inherent. Okay, but we cannot blame the traits in itself. Awareness of those traits is important, right? But if given the right environment, those traits will not nurture into something that is problematic, which needs to be understood by the parent itself. Okay? For example, I have a tendency of being aggressive. ठीक है, मुझे गुस्सा जल्दी आता है, if I say for that matter. ठीक है, अब अगर मुझे वो environment ही नहीं मिलेगा जहाँ पे वो मेरा गुस्सा इतना exaggerate हो जाए कि वो एक problem बन जाए, it will never reach to that level where parents will say कि हमारा बच्चा तो ऐसा, मतलब उसमें तो गुस्सा बचपन से ही रहा है, ठीक है, इसलिए वो ऐसे करता है. If they say this, the only counter to this thing is that every person has every trait in him or her. Okay, it is just that it varies according to, on a scale of 10, if किसी में गुस्सा 2 है, किसी में 3 है, किसी में 5 है, ठीक है, उस 5 वाले को थोड़ा ज्यादा असिस्टेंस चाहिए. लेकिन ये नहीं बोल सकते हम कि अगर उसमें 5 है, उसको कभी वो मतलब एनवायरनमेंट ऐसा मिला ही नहीं और वो 5 से अपने आप 10 पहुंच गया. So we need to understand that despite the child's predisposition towards a specific trait, the environment will cater to the rest of it. If the environment given is right, that trait will not reach to a clinical or a subclinical level where the child will actually start behaving in a way that it goes out of control. That is something that the parent needs to understand. Because a lot of parents say कि ये चीज तो हमारे बच्चे में ना गुस्सा तो बचपन से ही रहा था, अभी ये जाके ऐसे होने लगा. Then we need to dig upon the fact कि अब ऐसा हुआ क्या? What was the triggering factor? What was was there any adjustment issue? Was it something in the family that was going on which hit the child or which actually occurred in the child's head, which was not paid importance to? So यहाँ पे the voice of the child becomes very important. Because the parent is perceiving from their own end कि हाँ हमारी ओर से तो हमने तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं करा, but the child may have a different voice of his own कि ये चीजें हुई, इन चीजों की वजह से मुझे बुरा लगा. ठीक है कि मैम मुझे, ठीक है, मैं मानता हूँ मुझे गुस्सा ज्यादा आता था, लेकिन आज ऐसा क्या हुआ कि वो गुस्सा इतना हो गया कि मैंने अपना सिर दीवार पे मार लिया. If we are talking about this, there has to be a trigger to something. Okay, we cannot blame entirely कि मतलब ये मेरा टेम्परामेंट है, ये मेरा प्रीडिस्पोजिशन है, इसीलिए मैं ऐसे बिहेव करता हूँ. दैट इज नॉट हाउ इट वर्क्स एट ऑल विद एनीबडी. Not for that matter only children, but parents also. Parents also have a different set of temperament, and those temperament definitely genetically it is passed on in some way to the child. Okay, but we cannot say कि environment था ही नहीं ऐसा और बच्चा अपने आप ऐसा हो गया. Which means there has to be the environment that needs to be worked upon, and we need to explain this to the parent only. Okay, so the way in which it comes across to the parent is very important. Sometimes we need to explain the parent by giving a real life situation of their own day itself. For example, if the parent will say कि मुझे वैसे तो गुस्सा ज्यादा आता है, लेकिन आज ऑफिस में मेरी किसी से लड़ाई हो गई तो मेरी आज भड़ास निकल गई. नाउ वी टेल देम कि आपको तो गुस्सा आता था, आप कंट्रोल भी कर लेते थे, लेकिन आज क्योंकि आपका ट्रिगरिंग फैक्टर वो एक लड़ाई थी, तो वो आपका फुल ब्लोन हो के सामने आपने भी उसको उल्टा सीधा बोल दिया, उसने भी बोल दिया. द सेम कैन हैपन विद द चाइल्ड. But now giving the child his space wherein the child can actually confide with you and actually express his emotions कि आज मेरे साथ ऐसा हुआ मम्मी, आज पापा ऐसा हुआ, ये मेरे साथ हुआ, now tell me मैं कैसे डील करूं. There is the parent's role telling the child that now अगर ये चीज हुई है तो इसके लिए हम what are the alternate strategies in which we can actually express our anger as opposed to screaming and blaming or say harming one's own self or bullying somebody. All of this is a form of aggression. No, aggression is a very big term. वो दिखा उस चीज में, but how are we addressing that? So here we need to address both the trait as well as the environment. We cannot say it's nature, we cannot say it's nurture, but it is both. So like that we teach parents.
Well, I think what you clearly mentioned, it is not the responsibility of just one factor. There are
right
to contribute to the result which we're seeing right now, that is whatever particular behavior pattern in the child.
Yes.
I would like to add to what Gunjan ma'am has said. I agree with whatever she has said, but as we have acknowledged that parents go into denial mode, rather than addressing their concern in a more blaming manner, if we do it more sensitively, we can break their denial patterns and help them resolve the issue. So that is one thing that I wanted to say over here.
Yeah.
Okay. I absolutely agree with you, ma'am. It's not about the blaming thing that I was talking about. I remember this. Yeah, I actually remember this.
I think there's some.
I think yes.
Yeah. Well, I think so, will join us.
I absolutely agree with what Gunjan was saying. I was just bringing this point, and everybody, actually, it's not parents, it's not teachers, it is not children. Introspecting is the most difficult thing to do for anybody. Anybody, absolutely anybody. And that's why we as psychologists even give significance to more traditional methods of meditation, of yoga practices, so that in that manner, by giving ourselves some focused space, we can eventually try to introspect, because I think Gunjan ma'am is back.
Yes.
Can you just give me a minute? My phone just got discharged. I'll just connect it and be back. Is it possible?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, just give me a minute, okay? Just a minute.
Also, Meghal, somebody in the chat has Kavita.
Yeah, I was just coming to that. Yeah, so there's, I guess, Miss Kavita Shankar, she asks relevant questions, maybe, that parents are generally in a denial mode. If we talk for the benefit of the child, still they don't accept. How to deal with parents? Teachers' efforts go waste and parents set a negative example. Yeah, so
I have faced it. I have faced it personally, because that's what I said. There are times when I feel the parents need more counseling than the children. And yes, and this denial is a major challenge for us as teachers, because we realize that there is an issue and we know that it can be easily dealt with if they meet the counselor or speak to them. So in my case, I have been lucky, I would say, because I've got a lot of tremendous support from the school authorities, because when such a situation happens and I realize that the parent is just not willing to accept that there is some issue, then we have a special meeting where perhaps the vice principals, the counselor, the teachers, and not just I as a class teacher or as a subject teacher, but a couple of other teachers are also there. And we discuss it and try to make the parent understand that it is at the end of the day for the benefit of the child. And we also lay down what are the things, like the counselor helps us in doing that this is the issue. Perhaps it could be a learning disability which they don't want to accept, and then tell them that how it's going to benefit the child. And then we also give them examples, of students who had faced similar issues in the past, and how, because we were able to identify it, now the child is doing so well. So if you're able to create that a bond of trust between the school and the parents, then eventually you will find that they come around. But I have personally had to take help from the school authorities and the counselor in situations where I know that the parent was just not willing to accept or listen.
I think Sudipta ma'am has very aptly said that when anybody who goes in a denial mode, let's not say parents, anybody who goes in denial mode, the best way to break their defense mechanism is by showing them facts, and telling them the solutions of those facts. Obviously, the life throws at us all kinds of unacceptable facts that are negative, that are not acceptable to us. So there has to be a solution around that problem. So once that the school authority and the teachers and the counselors' efforts go into the building to the trust of the parents, I think it can be instrumental in breaking the barriers of the problem that we are trying to discuss right now.
Absolutely. And I'd like to tell Kavita ma'am that don't give up, because we as teachers are meant to be resilient. So especially challenges are something that we face every day, and challenges like this make us more resilient. So with the help of your school and your team of teachers, I'm sure you'll be able to handle the situation where the parents are in denial.
There's actually, a similar question. I guess it's asked by a teacher only. It's Miss Inu Garg. She asked that how to deal with the student who are passive in nature and do not show their anger. As a teacher, how to identify such kids and how to deal with them so that they are counseled well.
Yeah. So this is also got to do sometimes with, how not necessarily showing anger, but not reacting at all. Like sometimes in class, there was a fight and there was a child sitting in class, and he or she did not react only. But okay, let it happen, big deal. So that then as teachers, we have to identify the child and say that, you were party to that. You are also a perpetrator, because you were just sitting and watching. You did not intervene. You didn't do anything. So those are also behaviors and issues we have to deal with. And again, communication is the way to begin. And in the beginning, I had mentioned how once, through a poetry writing competition, I had identified this one child who had such negative emotions, which she had expressed through her poetry. And only when I read that and I realized that it's become a pattern, it's a trend. It's not like once in a while she writes something which is negative, it's throughout. So then, identifying that kind of a child, and then again, communication is the only way that we can handle it. And like I said, that there have been times when things have gone so out of hand for me as a teacher that I have to then, of course, discuss it with the counselors and then, ask them to take care of it. Because there are times when, because, I'm not professionally trained to handle certain behavioral issues or learning disabilities, which then requires professional help. That's when we refer the case to the school counselors, and then we get help, and we also get a lot of advice as to how we can handle the situation in our own way in the class itself.
Ma'am, just to add a point here, Sudipta ma'am, in the classroom, definitely that's the approach. Like, obviously, you will notice and observe children better than anybody else. And as you said that in a poetry thing you came across, so this is one of the major techniques that we follow being psychologists. Sometimes, when we get clients or we get especially adolescents and youth, when they are not willing to open up, sometimes they shut down because they have been made to believe that nobody will understand them. So opening up with such students or such clients is very difficult for us. So what we do is we give them a draw person test or a HTP we do. So we get to know a lot through their drawings, the amount of emotional pent up that is there in them actually comes out in the form of lot of shading here and there. And when we interpret, no, we get to know that the child is having issues in these domains. And this is especially for those students who are passive in nature, who do not communicate. Like, communication definitely is the key, but if communication is not present for a child who's shutting down, who's not willing to trust, because the trust has been breached, or the trust has never been established at the first place. So these are the techniques that we actually follow. And we get to know a lot. And then the child also questions कि मैंने तो मैम को कुछ नहीं बताया था, but still मैम को इतना कुछ पता लग गया. And from then we start building the trust, because they feel कि मैम को बिना बताए उनको इतना पता लग गया, so now I will open to her. Like, that is how sometimes it works. And it actually does wonders when we see, if for example through a poetry you are able to track a person or a child, इसके negative emotions है, the child will start confiding in you कि मैम ने मेरे बिना बोले ही, मेरे बिना एक्टिवली बोले ही कि मुझे प्रॉब्लम है, मेरी पोएट्री के थ्रू मुझे हेल्प करने का सोचा. सो नाउ इमेजिन व्हेन अ चाइल्ड इज कमिंग विद अ पिक्चर इटसेल्फ कि मैंने मैम ये ड्राइंग बनाई है, उसके थ्रू हमने बच्चे को पहचाना कि नहीं यहाँ पे इश्यूज है. दैट पर्सन और दैट चाइल्ड विल actually open up a lot more.
Correct, Gunjan. Art therapy and this draw a person test, yes, and other projective tests yes, function as great icebreakers in a counseling session.
Right.
And a passive kid freely opens up. I have dealt with a person who was who had a lot of anger issues, a lot of oppositional defiant personality, where he would not listen to authority, and he was engaging in a similar pattern of not engaging, no eye contact, looking down, and just not listening, having ability to listen to instructions, but openly not listening to the counselor when you knew. So with him, he was what, in a third or fourth standard, I don't remember now. With him I used CAT, that is child apperceptive test, which promotes story writing. And he opened up so much within one session that he could communicate more freely from the next session. So art therapy, like poetry, like drawings, like story writing, work very fruitfully in counseling sessions, and helping the child to open up and building trust.
It works wonders, actually.
Right.
Okay, I think these were our two questions, live questions, and with this, I think we come to the end of the webinar. And yes, thank you so much to all the panelists. I think it was indeed a very good brainstorming session. We managed to cover a lot of things, and I hope our audience, parents and teachers, have a good takeaway points from this, and I hope it's fruitful for them. So thank you so much to all three of you. And like mentioned before, the sharpest question winner is Miss Kavita. And congratulations, ma'am. And somebody from the communication team will contact you shortly and give you your voucher. And I guess on the screen now we'll have a small feedback form. Kindly, I request everyone who is present in this webinar to fill the feedback. And any of your questions which are left unanswered, we please by using #webinar_by_sharp, and we'll try to answer. And you all will get the participation certificate within 2 days. And yes, thank you so much to all three of you. Thank you, audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much.